Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the startup series yet again, where we tackle issues faced by startups and entrepreneurs. And I would like to first thank everyone for overwhelming response for this session. And today session is the best in the business who supports one in every six SaaS startups in India. So don't miss. Stay with us till the end. And now, before I start, a very quick introduction. Today's session is also supported by Thai Delhi and Upekkha, and we encourage you to visit the link shared by the team and to know more about Thai Delhi and Upekkha. I'm Govind Kedia. Those who know me, I run Arctic Invent, which helps companies increase their enterprise value by way of building business-centric IPR portfolio. My company Arctic Invent has worked with more than 1,000 startups from Europe and India, helping them build massive value on their products and technologies. And from those experiences, we understand that one of the main objectives of startups, especially those in technology and SaaS sector, is to broaden their reach and establish strong presence in multiple global markets. Expanding internationally is not only opens up new revenue streams, but also enhances the startup reputation and credibility. This afternoon, we look at those factors that can help you achieve this expansion, a kind of cheat sheet, you would know. And today, we have the best in the business, Prasanna, managing partner at Upekkha. For people who don't know Upekkha, it's a founder-centric SaaS accelerator which supported almost 120 plus startups, 240 founders, 98% active or acquired, 94 million annual ARR. And I'm pleased to welcome our guest speaker, Prasanna Krishnamoorthy, managing partner at Upekkha and founder coach who helps founder craft capital efficient value SaaS business. Welcome to Startup Series, Prasanna. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Govind. Thanks for having me on to this LinkedIn Live.
Great. Before we dive into our topic today, Prasanna, if you could give us a brief introduction about yourself and Upekkha, just so that we can get up to our audience up to the speed.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Prasanna. I run Upekkha. We are a B2B SaaS accelerator. So, we help founders who are building B2B SaaS companies grow faster and more capital efficiently. We've been doing this for about 6 years, and we've worked with about 120 startups, as Govind mentioned. We now have multiple startups above $5 million in annual recurring revenue, a few above $10 million in annual recurring revenue as well. And our goal is to help Indian founders build businesses that grow very fast and are able to go global. So lots of our startups are actually selling their software products globally on a recurring revenue basis.
Sure. No, great. And I would like to also take this opportunity to request those in audience to put down their comment sections and questions in the comments. Whatever comes to your mind, we'll be happy to take up while we are on the live. And first question, I think, Prasanna, would be, India is a big enough market, right? First is to establish why. So what's your take, when a startup talks about, we want to global, why Western markets? So India is big enough market now, being one of the most populous country in the world now. Like, why Western markets? So let's start from there.
So I disagree that India is a large market, right?
Okay.
We have a 3.5 trillion economy. The US economy is at 29 trillion or so. The US market is growing 1.6, 1.7%. India market is supposedly growing about 5-6%. So we are growing at about 200, $300 billion a year. And the US economy is actually growing 7x or 5x more than that, right? They're growing at about 1.2 trillion a year or something like that, right? So literally the amount of dollar growth in the economy in the US is 3 times more than what we have in India. That's number one. Number two, when you look at software buying in the US specifically, people have been buying software products for more than 40 years. So their buyers have a lot of maturity in terms of buying software. In India, many of the business buyers of software or users of software have never bought software for their business before. So they are very immature in terms of how they approach buying this software, how it has to be rolled out, how you have to do change management, how do you get your people to use that software. All of those things have not been done by business owners before, right? So when you sell a software to an Indian customer, the adoption takes a lot longer and costs a lot more than the same
Mm,
software adoption costs in the US, because they've
mm,
simply done it more times.
sure.
Then when you look at individual discretionary capacity to buy software, an average developer in the US earns probably somewhere in the $80,000 to $100,000 per year range, and they can buy any software they want for $250 or $500 a month with their own credit card without having to actually ask anybody, right? So it's completely discretionary. In India, I don't know of any company which has a discretionary budget for individual developers to buy software. In the same company in the US, if you look at a manager or a director, they may be able to buy software for $5,000 to $25,000 per year with no approval above them, right? They can just approve that purchase and buy it themselves, right? In India, if you had to sell some software to some company for an equivalent amount, right? So $20,000 is 16 lakhs. It would take you 3 months, right?
Mm,
It would take you 3 months to 6 months to get approvals. The purchasing department will get involved. They will ask for a discount. They don't even know what software is, and stuff like that, right? So, literally, the amount of money being spent in the US on software is probably 100 times or 1,000 times more than what's
mm,
being spent on software in India, right? So
mm,
I think it's about $2-3 billion in India is the amount of money being spent on software. It's probably upwards of 500 billion to $1 trillion,
mm,
somewhere in that range for US, right? So it's
sure.
not a question of US is 30% better, or even
Mm.
2x better, right? US is probably like 50x, 100x better. It's not even a comparison.
Great. No, thank you for sharing. So what I kind of take away for our audience is also, and I also understand that it's about the maturity. Of course, India is a growing market for sure, but in terms of size, of course, being US the largest, and I kind of agree that a lot of maturity is there. Relating to my own business of being in IP, of course, US is much mature market in terms of IP, kind of understanding IP and so on and so forth. So I kind of relate and draw kind of confusion, but that's a great start. So a lot of founders who sometimes get into this trap that uh, you know. That India is a big enough market. So much. Why to really start thinking about that? So I think that's a great conversation to kind of refer and really think back again that okay, it is something which should be considered in their life cycle. Thank you, Prasanna, for sharing that. So let's start with few success stories. I think then we can build a bit more. Questions are some coming as well, so I'll take up those questions along the way. But can you give us some examples of some capital efficient SaaS companies that have entered in the US markets or global markets, which you really believe is a great success story?
Yeah, so I think there are quite a lot, right? So I don't know whether they're in Delhi now or Pune or Bangalore, but Wingify is a company that is completely bootstrapped, got to about $30 million in annual recurring revenue, global product, one of the top products in that segment, continuing to grow and doing pretty well, right? So $30 million in ARR is a lot more than many funded companies have achieved. But it's not about whether they're funded or not funded, but it's about the fact that because they've been capital efficient, they've been able to give equity, keep equity with the founders and to the employees, and they can choose what they want to do with their business. Right? We have another company called iMocha, and this one is in Upekkha, and they got to about $2.5 $3 million in revenue with just $750,000 raised in capital. So when you do that, you then have a lot more control in terms of how you want to run the business, where you want to take it, and what kind of funding you want to raise. They subsequently raised a large round of Series A from 8 Road Capital a couple of years ago, right?
Mm,
And then we have a company called Social Pilot, which got to about 5 million plus in ARR with no capital raised at all, right?
mm,
And this is global. All of these are global revenues, right? So and of course, if you look at one of my favorite stats is that in 1992 there were
mm,
about 200 IT services companies, and they were
mm.
doing a total of $100 million in IT services exports. And in
Yeah.
2002, there were 8,000 IT services companies, and they were doing $12 billion of IT services exports, right? How many of those do you think were venture funded, right? Uh,
Exactly.
None,
Yeah.
maybe 10, 5, I don't
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
But the point there is that today SaaS is going to become like what IT services was. And so
Mm.
the best SaaS entrepreneurs are going to find that with technology like ChatGPT and GitHub Copilot, writing code
Mm.
and doing marketing, a lot of those things become much more cost effective. And on the other
Yeah.
side, there are a lot of buyers available who are looking for product, looking for change, looking for new
Mm.
software, and they're looking for something that's cost effective. But more than
Mm.
that, they're looking for something that will provide them the other pieces around the software which is required
Mm.
for adoption, right? So let's say today Arctic Invent adopts a software. You will need to
Mm.
put data into that software. You will need to train your employees on how to use that software. There may
Yeah.
be integrations that are required with other systems that you use with that software, right? And there may be reports and dashboards that you need as Arctic Invent, which are custom to what you want, right? So all of these things are the service part of SaaS. The last letter of
Mm.
SaaS stands for
Yeah.
service. And so you cannot adopt a tool and make it useful for
Mm.
you and get value out of it without doing all
Mm.
these other pieces. And
Yeah.
so, especially for a mid market and an enterprise, that becomes very important, right?
Mm.
And so, from India, you're able to do that really well. And when you do these
Mm.
things, you can actually get money for these things, which is actually decent margins, right?
Yeah.
So, between this and the fact that building the software is cheaper in India, and you can deliver a more broader set of things to your customers, you can actually sell this software globally for at a good price, right? Not the lowest price, but definitely not the highest price, while delivering more value. And if you do that again and again and again, you realize that, hey, you know what, this becomes a very capital efficient business, because I don't actually need a lot of capital to do the things that I need to start kickstart revenue.
Sure. No, sure. I think you are right, and also just building on the adaption piece, I do understand. Implementing a software in an enterprise is the big challenge is not to buy it. The big challenge is to adapt it. But
Exactly.
we all want to be like to be those success, and you just have mentioned and be able to move into multiple market, global or otherwise. But how do we know that? Okay, we are now ready to take that step. What's the kind of point when we start thinking about this? So what would be your view?
Sure. So I think there are only one or two markets in India where you can really get to a scale beyond 5 million or 10 million, and that's pretty much BFSI enterprise.
Mm.
You can do that in the SMB. There are a few companies which have done that in SMB software. KK comes to mind, Zing HR,
Yeah.
Great HR. So that's in the HR category. But by and large, if you start in India, you're going to hit a wall pretty fast. So most of the startups I
Mm.
know that are in India hit a wall at 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. So obviously, when you hit a wall, and in India, you realize that then that the market is like really small. So there's no way to
Mm.
break through that wall. So you would have to go global. Right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are companies that have in the BFSI enterprise sector gotten to 10 million plus, and there are a handful, literally two, three. I don't want to name names.
Mm.
And those folks are now really looking at, hey, which is the next largest market that I can, next large
Mm.
market that I can go to, because in the Indian context, they know that like the headroom is limited. They've gotten to 10 or
Mm.
20 or maybe 30 million. Like there is no way up. Like they already have
Mm.
the HDFCs and the
Yeah.
ICICIs as a customer. Like you can't, you're not going to get any bigger customers,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
So that is a real challenge, right? So at those 2 points, right,
Mm.
you have to realize that look, your headroom is limited. You have to go out and find markets, larger markets where you can build
Sure.
and deliver value, and therefore sell and make a ton of money.
So what you're saying, Prasanna, just a follow up, a bit more clarity for to the question is that what you're saying is that the the point that you know that you are ready for the next step or the global market is when you have already matured or already done it in the local market, or there are other elements that you start from thinking about the problems which are there in the US. And so if you can just bit more elaborate on that, that will really help people who are already doing this can give better sense of this thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I did not mean to suggest that people should start in India, hit a wall, and then go global, right? In
Yes.
most cases, founders, if you look at this seriously, if you look at this critically, you will figure out that the market in India for B2B enterprise or mid market or SMB SaaS is actually very very limited. So we
Mm,
advise founders to actually start global, right, from zero,
mm,
and so figure out
mm,
problems which are global, figure out problems in the US, figure out
mm,
problems for specific industries in the US and start with that. Because
mm,
the thing is that the flywheel, the revenue flywheel that you're building in India and the revenue
mm,
flywheel that you have to build in the US, they are not exportable. You can't take the
mm,
same product and software and revenue engine that you're building for
mm.
India and try to transplant it to another geography. It will not work. And
Sure.
this is a hard lesson that a lot of founders learn very very late. They've
Mm,
spent like four
mm,
5 years 6 years getting to that 2 3 million of revenue in India,
mm,
and then they realize that that same thing doesn't even apply to global markets, right?
yeah.
So it's a very India specific problem that they've solved, not a global problem. And then software is already has a particular DNA. The software already is written with a particular point of view. It's solving a set of problems. Your marketing, your sales, everything is tuned towards that. It's very very hard to break out of that.
Sure. No, thank you for sharing. And I think that's where expertise like Upekkha and such accelerator comes in picture. Kind of telling that very early in the journey that hey, this is the kind of market you are looking at and how you can plan better. So what we take away from this is that of course look at your market, look at the ceiling, but also be prepared. Research very early in the stage. When you are planning the business, when you are going to the one step at a time, this is also an important step to plan it ahead, not really after hitting the wall, like you said, thinking about it. So great insights. Thanks, Prasanna, for sharing. So now we are taking a call, let's say, to enter these new markets. How do we ensure that we are targeting the right market to enter? Is US by default, or how do you prioritize these market to what to enter first? So that would be think the logical step to when you go in this conversation to the global markets.
Right. So what we generally ask founders to do is, develop a deep domain understanding of wherever they're trying to get to. That might be horizontal, that might be vertical. And some of the founders who are doing really, really well today from a growth perspective have spent upwards of 15 to 18 months, maybe sometimes 24 months, not building any product, just talking to customers to figure out what are the problems that are there, what are the problems that are urgent, how do you solve those problems, and how do you market to those people, how do you build a community, how do you build a set of buyers and all of that stuff, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
what's important is that founders start from some place where they are able to understand the market and get
mm,
a very deep understanding of the market, right?
mm.
And not just a
Sure.
shallow understanding of the market. Too many founders, and this is partly because founders don't understand that any startup that you do is a 10+ year journey, and therefore
Mm,
they think that I should be building the product. I need to build the product. I need to build the product, right? They're in a hurry to build the product. But what they don't realize that 70-80% of their success is actually depends on which market they are building into, and so they
sure.
pick a market within a month or two or three, and then spend
Mm,
the next 9 years and 9 months building in that, and that 3 months determined what the results are going to be for the next 9 years and 9 months. So there are many ways to pick markets, and I believe the most critical thing is that you have to pick a market where you are comfortable understanding that market, you really understand it deeply. Number two,
mm,
if that market requires you to sell into that market, then you better be good at selling. If you are good at
mm,
marketing, then pick a market which needs marketing more than sales, right?
mm.
Or if you're building a market which requires a really really excellent product, maybe you're selling to
Mm,
developers, or so it requires an excellent developer API, and make sure that is
mm,
something that is your strength. Too many
mm,
times founders have a strength which is in one area, and then they pick a market which requires completely different set of skills, and so the founders
mm,
are learning those things, and the problem then is that you keep second guessing. You don't know, am I
mm,
doing this right,
mm,
or am I doing this right but the market is not there, or it's not
mm,
responding to this? You don't know. Versus when
Mm.
founders are able to align these things well, what happens is that the market that they pick and the strategy that they use is a lot of sales, or a
Sure.
lot of product led growth or whatever. When that's
Mm.
aligned,
Mm.
then the founders don't have to second guess themselves, because they know whatever they're doing, it's right, it's good. But hey, the market is not responding, so I have to make some changes in what I'm doing, right? So
Mm.
that
Mm.
uh, feedback loop is very, very important, and that cannot happen if I'm doing something where I have no expertise in, and I don't have the
Mm.
domain
Mm.
expertise. So I don't know what's
Sure.
going on. Customer is saying this, does it mean this or this or this? It becomes hard.
No, great. I think two key takeaways, which of course with all this conversation, of course, a lot of takeaways, but I think two which at least I would want to highlight again is it's a long term game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I think that's a very, very clear answer. And I think that is something that we need to be told again and again, again and again, because every time some news come and then we like, we are behind the race. But we have to realize that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And thank you for that reminder, Prasanna. And the second thing which I learned was that you have to look inside than looking outside. So what's your expertise, like you said, and then map it what market is requiring, and then go in that rather than doing it other way around. So that is really, really, great insight. Thank you for sharing that. Now let me ask now some secrets. What are the key strategies of for entering, global markets as a startup? Do you have a kind of a playbook of go to market plan, or set some best practices that you advise the startup you coach to use on a regular basis? So if you can share some of those secrets, that would be great.
Sure. So I think the secret is really hard work, right? And I don't think there is any silver bullet there. I think the real secrets in a B2B SaaS kind of a context come from the domain knowledge that the founder is able to get about that particular market. And so to get that, what do they do is really the question. And so some founders are able to, for example, I have a founder who, is able to go to events in that
Mm,
space, and
mm,
that founder is able to have very good conversations, which extract deep insights from the people that they meet very, very quickly, right? And
mm,
so they're able to do this again and again and again. And so therefore, when we look at them, we're able to see how fast they're able to progress in understanding of that market, right? And
mm,
today, once you have that understanding, translating that into product and then GTM and stuff like that, that part is easier.
mm,
So I think the superpower or the secret for founders to do well is to be able to actually go somewhere where your prospects are there, uh, have like really good relationship based conversations with them about their problems, uh, and live their life for a day or a week or more. Sit in their
mm.
offices, observe what's happening, like learn from them, how their day goes, right? What
Sure.
work they're doing, and that kind of depth of understanding. The founders who are doing really well have done that with literally 50, 100, 200, 300 people, right? And so that is what we suggest to founders. Too often, founders just talk to 5, 10, 20, 30 people, and then they're like, yeah, I know what I'm going to do now, and then come back and try to do that, right?
Great.
So what we suggest is that, number one, when you reach out to people on LinkedIn, be humble, be polite, ask for what you're going to learn from them. See if you can add some value. Don't be salesy. Right?
Mm,
That's something that helps a lot. Number two, if you can afford to do it, go to events. In the US,
mm,
there are lots of events that are very, very specialized.
mm,
So there was a lot of I saw a post about an event for people who are knitting, right? It's a knitting community, and the knitting
mm,
community has 75,000 people, right? So it's just crazy, the size of these communities. In India,
mm,
there are some 250, 300 banks. In
mm.
the US, there are 6,000 credit unions, which are the equivalent of our cooperative banks, but much more professionally run. Right? So the depth of any market is so high, and so you have to
Mm,
understand each of these markets in a very high degree of detail in order to
mm,
be able to then make the right choices from what product to build,
mm,
what problem to solve, how do I position that, how do I price that, right? And so
mm.
today, a lot of that stuff has become there are playbooks for it.
Yeah,
Uh, and maybe in a 6 months or a year, ChatGPT will be able to get you those playbooks as well. But that depth of understanding of the customer problem, that can't be done by ChatGPT today, or maybe not
absolutely.
even soon.
Sure. No, I think this is great insight. I think again and again, the resonation or the repeat of the message will be to also understand the customer. And I don't know which story I was listening in about a software startup that they were trying to create something solution for Kirana stores, and the founders went in, spent 6 months, 8 months in the Kirana store, running that shop, understanding
Yeah,
the grounds and understanding how they really do. And I think that kind of grit is required for building great products. I think you just reminded it the which is the most relevant conversation of building a SaaS is to live that life of your customer. Thank
yeah,
you for sharing that. I think that's one of the key takeaway, that live your life as a customer for some time to understand their pains and then develop the product. So
yeah.
I think that is one of the biggest advice I would say. The takeaway that anybody take one takeaway. This is a great takeaway to take. But what are the common challenges and pitfalls? Of course, getting in the FOMO and kind of speed is which you've shared. But what are some of the common challenges and pitfalls startup face when they're entering these markets? And what are some common areas that they can avoid and mitigate them? So some advice on that.
Sure. So I think a lot of times founders, uh, one of the most common things, right, is we underestimate how much positioning particularly
Mm,
matters. We also
mm,
underestimate how much of a role pricing plays in being able to do the GTM right. So I'll give you examples of both, right? So in India, when we maybe buy milk, you go to the shop. Let's say you want to buy milk, right?
yeah.
And we all grew up in a generation where milk meant there's only one type of milk, right? You go to
Yes.
shop, there's one type of milk, you know, you buy it, that's it, right?
Yeah.
But if you've been to the US and you go to a shop and you try to buy milk, you will literally freeze because there will be 35 or 40 or 50 varieties of milk there, and they will all the milk will be in small packs, medium packs, and large packs.
Mm,
And there'll be like there are some milks which are denoted by color. The only difference between those big jars will be the color of the lid. One will be blue, one will be red, one might be green, one might be yellow, and you'll be like completely flustered at the set of choices of what kind of milk to buy, right? Because they'll have low fat milk, high fat milk, full fat milk. They have something called half and half. They have uh, what do you call it, organic milk. Then
yeah.
they'll have of course today you have all this oat milk and
Oat
plant
milk.
based milks, right? And so it's like a vast choice, right? And so
Mm,
American buyers, global buyers generally have a lot more choice in their life of anything that they want to buy than we have as Indian consumers. And so what
mm,
happens there is that they are looking for something that's positioned right for them, and the same thing
mm,
happens, right? So what happens is that they will position the highest priced milk in a medium size that's easy to
mm,
get, right? the
mm,
most the highest volume cheapest milk will be at the bottom of the shelf, right? So literally the arrangement of items on the shelf matters, and so
mm,
you will learn that hey, I want to buy premium products, then they're here. I want to buy the low cost volume products, they're there, and so on and so
mm,
forth, right? And the same positioning applies to B2B software products as well, because in any category, there are going to be multiple products. So your positioning of your product as, hey, are you the product that is most complete? Are you the product that's easiest to use? Are you the product that's fastest to integrate? Are you the product that has the most reliable data in its engine? Or
mm.
are you the product that has the most advanced features, right? Or
Correct.
are you the product that's for this specific industry, right? all of this kind of positioning actually matters in global markets. And as Indians, we are not exposed to that kind of positioning on a daily basis, right? So we don't think that way. And so founders go, and many cases, see, for us, the restaurants that are good restaurants, or restaurants that do well and that we go to, are like thali restaurants, right? So you go to a
Yeah.
thali place, that's 44 dishes. You have something for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we think of as good or great.
Choice.
That's what we think of as choice, right? But that's not the choice that these people face. These people, when they go to a restaurant, they might order a grilled fish, right? And that restaurant might only serve grilled fish. It may not serve anything else. But that grilled fish will come to you with just it's just lightly grilled on with some olive oil, and you will have to add salt and pepper to that, right? But it'll be the
Got
best grilled fish you've ever eaten in your life.
Yeah.
Versus you in the thali place, there may be 30, 40 items there, but none of those items will be great. They'll all be okay, right? And so you will choose between those items that are there, but you don't have actually choice of, is this, I want something better than this. You can't, right? But the markets in the global markets pick things which are specific products for specific problems, but are at a very, very high quality level, and they're positioned as solving that particular problem. But if you buy this product, it will solve that problem 100%. Versus we are used to go, we Indian founders go there and say, yeah, I'll solve all your problems. And so the American consumer, the buyer, is looking at it and say, you can't solve all my problems. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So then they automatically think that you don't know what you're talking about. So Indian
I think
founders
great
have to have
insight.
that mindset.
So yeah, I mean, great insight of kind of understanding the market. Absolute great example. People have commented again that great example of drawing this metaphor. And one again, the learning is that go deep in your market. Understand that problem so well that you are not just a choice, but if you are a choice, then it's the best grilled fish, like you said, on the planet that they can get, right? So thank you for sharing. I think it gives a lot of clarity to a lot of people, I'm sure, who are listening in. Now, three challenges which is their legal, regulatory, and compliance. A lot of we would talk about it. Investors are staying away if there's any red flag there. So these are the factors that typically are in the consideration. So how to kind of get out of that block of these three areas when we are thinking about or going in these markets? So what would be your view
Yeah,
on that?
honestly, like legal regulatory compliance is far easier in the US than in India. So if anybody has a question that if that's what's blocking them from going global, it should. If you've done Indian compliance, like you're going to be better at better than uh, you're going to find it easier anywhere else in the world. Literally, India is the
Right.
hardest, worst, right? And the other side of it is also that if you pick, for example, Delaware as your headquarters, right? What happens is that Delaware courts are Delaware as a state prioritizes company law, and so they have courts that can actually give you adjudicate on disputes in company law, and they do it very fast, right? And those judges have literally decades of experience now in disputes involving company law, so they're able to give actually very, very good judgments, fair judgments on company law that a court in India or almost anywhere else in the world will find it very hard to do, because Delaware is one tiny state. Okay, they don't have anything. They just have like
Yeah.
millions and millions of companies, and the reason that
Yeah.
companies do business there is one of the reasons is this,
Yeah.
because their courts actually, they don't have any other cases, right? They only have business cases, and they just keep doing that all day long until they're experts. So anybody who's worried about the legal, regulatory, compliance aspects, don't be worried. You will get professionals in the US. You will get tools in the US because things are stable. So you will be able to do stuff with tools and professionals in the US for a lower cost, a literal lower cost than in India.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I agree, and even in our industry of IP, and Delaware is the most kind of preferred place if there is any IP issues or something happening, I think Delaware court are kind of that's the first place people will go and kind
Absolutely.
of discuss and maybe sue you or whatever. But I think thanks for putting this reminder again that there is block in the mind, not in the market, right? So take your first step.
Absolutely.
Now, localization is something you talked, when we started the conversation. Of course, how important it is, and how do we strike a balance between localization and maintaining a consistent brand identity across these different markets when we are entering these. So, what would be your take on that?
Sure. See, brand identity will be identical across different markets. And you're going to go into different markets from a global perspective only once you've outgrown specific markets, right? So I would not suggest that companies go and try to localize or build for specific markets until they've crossed tens of millions of dollars in revenue.
Mm,
First few
mm,
millions of dollars, you should not be doing anything differently for different markets. You should be doing, because you can't
mm,
afford to build different
mm,
products for different markets.
mm,
And so yeah, localization is not required in large part. Language localization may be something that's useful if you're going into Europe. But European countries are fragmented, different languages, different sales models, different buying processes. And so, therefore, again, just like the India US comparison, the US as a single large market is far,
mm,
far larger than any single European country that you might be selling software to specifically. Right? And
sure.
so, in large part, the localization doesn't make a lot of sense, except if your product is something that's like a B2B2C product, where there may be
Mm,
consumers who are using something that your product delivers to your
mm,
customer, right? So let's say
mm,
you build a ticketing SaaS, and so therefore, the end customers are using it, are in a particular country, and they are
mm,
using a product that you are somehow building for them, right?
mm,
Now that consumer may want to see an interface in Spanish or German or
mm,
whatever, right? And that may be true even if you are selling to somebody in the US, right? So those kind
mm,
of things which might have an end consumer kind of an interface might need localization. But for the large part, software is built in English, sold
mm,
in English, whether the
mm,
customer, wherever the customers are. And if
sure.
anybody is looking at localization too early, I would strongly urge them against that,
Mm,
because they may not understand that market deeply enough to get customers in that market. And if you don't
sure.
have that, there's no point. And on the other side, large software makers like a Microsoft or Apple or AWS or whoever else, all those interfaces, all that software, all the stuff that's used to build, everything is B2B,
Mm,
primarily English. And they're
mm,
literally making hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue doing that. So, people are used to buying software in English.
sure. Sure. No, I think great insight. Again, this is a common mental block as well. That okay, I need to do a lot of customization and localization. Now, it's
I
also
will give a caveat there, however, right?
yeah.
There is one caveat there. If you are building tools for regulatory or compliance or legal
Mm,
uh,
mm,
domains,
mm,
then you pretty much have to rebuild the product for
mm,
different geographies.
sure.
You cannot even localize it. You
Mm,
will literally have to rebuild the product, because the way
sure.
GST and VAT or whatever GST and stuff is there in India is very different regime from what is there in Europe. It's a very different regime from what is there in the US. And if you try to
Sure.
build one invoicing software which does all three, it just becomes a very
Mm,
pretty painful mess
yeah.
for customers to deal with.
No, I think in that context, I always look at Zoho Books. I mean, the way beautifully they have done Indian GST, and then they have so much modules around US tax laws. I think they have done a fantastic job in kind of creating this kind of localization of tax regimes, and I think that's a great example of
But
what
Zoho is not a startup.
I know, but I'm just sharing. I mean, of course, that is just sharing that. Of course, when I mean, they have done this tax one because it just came in my mind that hey, they have done really,
Absolutely.
really well. Uh, now, it's a question that I am going to ask, and this is the first question was posted by Kishore. How do you acquire first 10 customers and then 100 before you start hiring, taking massive actions? What's the cheat sheet and growth hack for this?
Sure. So first 10 customers literally have to be sold by the founder in large part. So if it's an SMB product, then you have to have built some kind of an engine for people to find you and or you to find them and make that first 10 sales. Almost every startup, the way they get their first 10 customers is different, because each founder approaches it in a different way, and what works for a particular segment is something that you have to discover, right? And so some segments, they may be actively buying software, so those segments, it's easier to go get in front of those customers by doing SEO or SEM, or some kind of marketing activity which gets you in front of those customers who are searching for your products, right? On the other hand, in a mid-market or an enterprise, they may not be actively searching for a product that they're going to buy from you, in which case you have to figure out a way to reach them, tell them that, hey, do you have this problem? Engage them over a period of time, create that awareness, create that brand awareness, all of that stuff, in order to be able to then uh, convert them into customers, right? And so for the first 10 customers, a lot of times in mid-market and enterprise, it's literally the founder going out, figuring out somebody one after the other and selling to them. What we suggest is that when people are doing these two things, you have to make sure that you're looking at how the buyer buys and what is the buying process. And so for a particular buyer type, they will have a particular buying process for some kind of software that they buy, right? And so if this is the buying process that they use, if you try to come with a different buying process, actually it doesn't work. It's very poor from a
Sure.
transference perspective. So you have to figure out, hey, these buyers buy like this, and you have to fit yourself into that buying process. And but many founders, like I didn't have any sales or marketing background before I started up my first two startups. So what happens is we don't even know that there is something called a buying process. And so trying to understand the buyer's buying process and mapping yourself to that buying process and trying to get into that buying process and being able to get ahead of that, that is very critical to actually cracking the first 10 and then the 100. Because in the first
Okay.
10, if you figure out the buying process, then you can set up an organization to scale to the next 100. It's not going to be easy, but you can start figuring out, hey, what are the levers I need to pull to start getting a repeatable flow of leads? Because now I know where they are searching for this kind of software, or what kind of a
Sure.
need do they have to fit into my funnel
Mm,
for me to
mm,
build, nurture them, and get them as
mm.
customers over time. So that's typically what we recommend to founders for getting that first 10 and the first 100 customers.
Sure. No, I think again, the takeaway which relates to your previous comment that you have to have a depth of understanding of your market, and then the conversation of buying process, what are the drivers, will automatically probably get to the 10 initial sales. And like you said, founder has to do the hard job in this case, at least to enter in a new market. So great insight. I think that's a great way to start. Now, would you recommend any set of resource tools that you would recommend to kind of help audience, they can read more, or something that can streamline their expansion efforts? Any quick reference on that?
Sure. So we've written a book. It's called the Value SaaS Guide. It talks about what founders should do at the very early stage. I'll ask the team to post a link to that.
Great.
It's available on Amazon Kindle as well, or it's
Mhm.
available for a free download as well.
Great, great. I think we'll definitely post the link, after the session here. Now, I think this is one of the question again I got from one of the SaaS founders, and probably my last question. Then we'll start taking up the comments and questions. Is how do you optimize your marketing and tech spends? And while we talk about value SaaS, like you mentioned, but this is a huge spend. As we understand, SaaS flywheel when it comes to spending less than $1 to make $1. That's what Upekkha's kind of motto and kind of focus is. So how to really get there? Because when we go in Western markets, typical marketing spend on Google Ads or wherever we are doing, it's going to be higher, and then the tech spend will also get into the picture. So what would be your advice on that? Because that's sometimes it seems prohibitory that, hey, uh, I have to spend a lot of dollars on Google or whatever, LinkedIn marketing or sales tools. So how would you do that?
Sure. So, couple of things, right? One is you have to figure out which stage you are in from a customer and a customer understanding of your product and what you want to sell, and also that the absolute cost doesn't change, but the cost per lead or the cost per customer depends a lot on how well you're able to convert your prospects who are coming in from a paid campaign perspective. And third, all of this depends on the pricing that you use. Okay. So the most common mistake that founders make is actually on the pricing part of it. You can actually charge a lot more for the same customers by delivering more value, and therefore that sales and marketing cost does not become a problem. In reality, what happens is founders actually end up charging too less, because in many cases founders peg their price at the lowest competitor price and then, you know, price it at lower than the lowest competitor price, which is not a good strategy at all, because in many cases Indian founders or global SaaS founders building products, the product is better than your cheapest competitor's product. Right? And so this, I will come back to one of your earlier questions, which is a mistake that founders make. I know of a startup which had a deal with one of the largest banks in the US, and they had put in a bid, and their bid got rejected. And 3 or 4 years later, the founder was able to catch up with the person who was actually running that bid process and stuff like that. And he asked him, "Look, my product fit all the requirements. I know that it fit all the requirements. And I know that there is no way that, the competitor bid would have been lower than our bid, because, they quote in the millions of dollars and we quoted $70,000. And yet we lost the bid, right? Why did we lose the bid? I'm curious." And that person said, and that person said, you need to provide support to me as an American company, and you might need to put one support person in the US time zone to support me, because I'm a very large organization. At $70,000, you cannot afford to put even one person to support me in the US. And your price was too low, and that's why we rejected you. And we gave the contract to somebody who bid $750,000. This is actual reality versus what founders think is I can win contracts by being the lowest price. You have to understand that in an Indian market, which is very price sensitive, you can win customers based on price. But in global markets, people are looking for quality, people are looking for service, people are looking for a lot more than just the cost, right? And one of the things that over the last 20, 30 years, global buyers have been told is that, look, you have to look at the total cost of ownership of the product, not just the cost you're paying for the product, right? And you have to look at how well it works for you and how effective it is for you, not just the cost of the product. And so when you have let's say, an accountant in New York, they paid $150,000 a year. Do you think they care about whether the price of the software that they use is $15,000 or $12,000 or $25,000? It doesn't matter. That person is being paid $150,000 a year. So if you want to make them more effective and you're buying software for them for $20,000 a year, and the competitor, which is from India, is at $12,000 a year, you're not going to buy the $12,000 software, right? So you can't win that deal on price. And so these two things, when you think about from a price perspective, then it gives you much more freedom to spend money on the marketing and sales. And I'm not saying splurge money on the marketing and sales, right? But spend money on marketing and sales. Number two, once you're at the right price and you're able to spend the right amount of money, then you have to look at how can I make sure that I'm targeting the right set of buyers and doing the positioning right. Because if I'm coming to you, you're vegan in the US, and I'm trying to sell you fish, it's already lost, right? And
Absolutely.
so it's not going to work, right? But that's the mistake that a lot of people are making. You're attracting vegans to your store, and then you're trying to sell them fish. So obviously your
Sure.
conversion rate will be low,
Sure.
and it's going to look like your pricing doesn't match.
Mhm.
Versus in the
Mhm.
US, a fresh caught, a restaurant which is selling fresh caught, salmon from, Alaska or some shit like that, can
Yeah.
sell that for like $120.
Mhm. Sure. I think that kind of also answers one of the question posted by Kamal, that with so much of demand knowledge you have, interested to know ways you can get inbound inquiry generated, not the mechanism but the thought process. I think that's the answer, that you don't need to sell kind of fish to a vegan person. the thought process and the clarity of thoughts is required, and then some mechanism with the lead magnets, you can definitely get that. I think that would
Okay.
answer that
So
question as well.
yeah, so the
Yeah.
lead magnets have to be so finely tuned,
Yes. Yeah.
right? So that this segment, they care about this set of lead magnets will actually appeal to them. They will look at it, they will read it, they will appreciate it, they will then align with what I'm saying and then come to me,
Sure. Got it.
right? So that level of empathy has to be there for the customer.
Sure. Great. One more question and like a comment from Priyank Jamar. I think there are a lot of still a lot of wrong perceptions about India and Indian companies. Any some thoughts around it? Is it really true or just a mental block? How would
Yeah,
you
I
address
think too
that?
many people are thinking that there is a market in India, right? And I think there isn't,
No,
for the large
what I
for
think,
B2B SaaS.
yeah, what he's saying is that in the Western markets there is a lot of misconceptions about Indian
Oh,
companies.
absolutely not, right? See, the beauty of American buyers is that they don't care whether you're a dog or you're a cat or whatever, whoever you are, as long as you're offering value to them,
Mm,
they don't care, right? They don't care about
mm,
anything, right? If you're offering value, if you're fair, if you're professional, nothing else
mm.
matters, right? And
Sure.
so, largely, you are going to be selling to businesses. And so,
Mhm,
what businesses care about is, hey, is this effective? Is this something that I
mhm,
can use that makes my job better, makes my life better? And
mhm,
are you responsive to my queries? And
mhm,
can I make
mhm,
sense of what you're saying? Right? If
mhm,
you meet these, like they will buy from you. They don't care where you're from.
mhm,
Right? Now, it may be harder for them to transact with an Indian entity than with the
mhm,
US entity, and that may be because of credit card, payments reasons, or there may be a government agency which can't pay a non-American entity easily and stuff like that, right? But other than that, I have not seen. And by and large,
mhm,
these companies that you are selling into are going to be in the large cities, which
mhm.
are already in the US fairly multicultural. These are not
Yeah,
your cities which are monoculture kind of places, right?
yeah.
So even if you are on a call with them, they will not ask you whether you're in India in many cases, right? Because for all they
Mhm.
know, you could be a brown guy sitting in the next street.
Yeah, yeah.
So that doesn't. There are no, and they have been fed the statement or the philosophy that Indians are good at software, right? So they're going to
Yeah.
be like quite fine buying software
Absolutely.
from an Indian.
Absolutely. I think we have to use that image in a positive and look at from a positive
Absolutely,
angle than a negative angle. Great.
absolutely.
There are a couple of questions. Do we have market in Pakistan? Do we have market in Africa? And I think that kind of answered already in our conversation that how to really identify those markets. So I'm not going to pick that question up. But thank you, Prasanna. I think we are almost at the end. 1 hour gone. We could not realize. Thank you for sharing great insights. But before I let you go, what would be your kind of five things or few things that you would say as a cheat sheet or like a step guide to all the listeners or SaaS product founders who are listening in today, as a kind of a summary of your thoughts on this topic.
Sure. So number one, make sure you're solving the right problem. And by right, I mean a problem that's actually worth solving, a problem that's urgent and big enough uh, to solve, and a problem that is there for enough people. That is the most critical thing. Too many founders solve problems that nobody cares about, and therefore you cannot sell it after that, right? That is like number one. If you took care of that, then a large number of things will be taken care of. Number two, really understand your customer much more deeply. Don't just have transactional relationships with your customers. Your customer can also be a channel partner for you. Your customer can be a salesperson for you. Your customer can be an investor for you. Your customer can be a co-founder for you. And all of these things have happened, right? Again, too many founders have a very one-dimensional view of who they're working with and how they should work with somebody, and therefore they constrain the ways that you can actually work together, right? And so if you're able to get your customers to be more than just customers for you, then you can actually do a lot more and a lot more capital efficiently as well, right? Number three, look at large markets. Look at
Mm.
the US market, look at large markets. Don't get stuck into small markets, whether that's in India or a niche market somewhere else, right? And there are markets which are very tough to get into, especially the spaces around regulation, which are regulatory or compliance or accounting or legal and these kind of spaces. Every country, you will have to build a different product. And so, therefore,
Mm.
that becomes very, very hard thing to do, right? So
Mm.
be very careful about that because your market is limited by the size of that geography that you're getting into, and so you have to be very very careful about that, right? But number four, look for when you're looking for these markets, look for what is the current state of the art in the market. Who are the competitors in the market? Try to use their products, see where they're good, see where they're bad, and try to see where you can be better, maybe using better tech, better service, better integration, better data, whatever that may be, right? And try to see how you can do that before you jump into that market, right? Talk to your competitors, talk to people who have used those products before. Too many founders think I can build a better product than that without even understanding why a particular
Mm.
product might have evolved in a particular way because of pressures in that particular market, right? So that these
Mm.
are like four things that I would strongly suggest that founders do better when they start.
Sure. No, thanks. And I think I also want to kind of got reminded by someone told me that success lies in the boring stuff, and a long run game because identifying customers, going deep, working with them sounds like a boring job when it comes to like fast paced funding game. I think that's what I would say, that success probably lies in the boring stuff, and true in our case. Now, Prasanna, I also want you also to give a bit of insights on Upekkha Fund. I know applications are up for the new round. So if you can give a bit of a shout out to people who are out there, maybe interested to know about what's the process, and can you just give a brief before I let you go, and also share how they can reach you, and how to kind of apply for this. Just give us some bit of insight so that we can conclude this.
Sure. So we run a cohort-based accelerator program, which is every 6 months. So the next cohort starts in September. Applications close in June, I think June or July, and applications are now open. We will be taking a set of early stage SaaS startups, typically revenues between somewhere in the 5K MRR, 10K MRR kind of a range, and we help founders get to their revenue generating engine in place. And so many of the founders who come to us come with a product in India and they realize that, man, I have to go global now, or they've starting to build a global product, and they're tech folks, and they know how to build the product but they don't know how to take it to market. Or we have services startup founders who built a successful IT services business and they're now trying to build a product business, and they realize that in a product business there's a lot. They may have built a very successful services business, but they have a lot to unlearn in order to build a great product business. So these are the kind of folks who come to us, and what we do is basically a 6 month cohort program where we take equity for the accelerator, and we also provide capital of $100,000 per startup. That's the model that we offer. And there is also, beyond the 6 months, they get access to the community of founders, the 200 plus founders in Upekkha who are now at all kinds of revenue and in all kinds of places. I think we have almost half a dozen or more startups just in B2B SaaS in the security domain. We have
Mhm.
probably a dozen startups which are in the HR tech domain. We probably have a
Mhm.
dozen startups or more in the MarTech domain. We have a dozen startups which are in the AI space serving B2B, right? So any founder who comes now to Upekkha will find that there is a sub cohort of startups which are in that domain itself, and they
Mhm.
can learn a hell of a lot from these founders. And
Mhm.
the learning is much more tuned to what they need, rather than generic SaaS advice. And generic SaaS advice may be right, but may not be specifically for them and their vertical or their niche and stuff like that. But we now have sub cohorts in all these which are able to help founders in each of
Nice.
these in very very specific manners.
Great. No, thank you, Prasanna, and I will let you go. We are done in an hour. It was amazing. A lot of great comments. Thank you, Christian, and thank you, people who have commented and appreciated the talk. And thank you, Prasanna. And I'll let you go. Thank you for sharing all the insights, and I hope we look at the best cohort next, and hopefully to have more successful very soon. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Govind, for having me on. It was a pleasure. Great
Thank
questions.
you.
Had a fun time.
Thank you. Thank
See
you. Thank you all for being here today. I hope the session was great, and I was able to provide you some value for your time. And I wish you all the best in your expansion endeavors. In the next couple of sessions, I was requested to talk about IP and IP portfolios, but I'm not going to talk alone. I'm going to get best of the speakers, best of the investors to talk about it. The next one is on the 12th May. Where we are going to get a very successful startup and one of the leading investment fund who will be talking about how to approach IP and IP portfolios. And so stay connected, follow me, follow our Arctic Invent page. I would encourage you to follow us so that we can share more details. There was a question that can you see this again? Yes, it is absolutely live all the time. It is also available on YouTube and on LinkedIn page, so you can always feel free to watch it again if you found it useful. And do follow us. And thank you. Do not forget to also follow Prasanna and Upekkha Fund. See you, and thank you for being here. And let's speak to you on 12th of May. Don't forget, tune in for sure. Okay. Thank you.